Jim, thanks for coming on today. Why don't you introduce yourself for us?
Fantastic. My name's Jim Hamann. I'm up in Rhode Island and have two businesses in Rhode Island. I've got a copper cookware restoration business called East Coast Tinning, and also we're making new pans here in Rhode Island. It's under Duparquet Cookware, and we've got three separate lines of really beautiful cookware that we're making here in the States.
So the way I found you initially, I had a client looking for, really high-end cookware, a new home, furnishing, new house, new kitchen, and we're always trying to maximize all the things that go into a pan. And you were making pure silver cookware, which I think is pretty unique in the U.S. Can you explain to
So
me how did you get to that end game of cookware?
Yeah, from the beginning, is the origin story basically is I was restoring copper cookware, and it's got a lining of tin traditionally. So I was relining these pans that people were sending back to me, and the quality of these pieces were just unbelievable compared to what you could buy out there these days. And I said, I have to start making pans that are of the quality that I'm seeing come back to me. And for a couple of years, we were making tin lined copper cookware out of under the Duparquet brand. And the next step, there was a gentleman named Joseph Heinrichs. Joseph Heinrichs was making pieces in the arts and crafts period. So he was in the early 1900s making cookware, but also service pieces. And his twist on things was doing a silver lined copper piece. So he was making teapots that were copper with a silver lining. And he was doing some cookware as well that was copper pieces, copper cookware, but with a lining of silver. And I picked that up and started to have a second line of pieces under the Duparquet brand that were the same shapes, but with a lining of silver instead of a lining of tin. And at that point, I was looking for the next thing, and I was either going to go compete with the Williams Sonomas of the world and do a stainless steel version, which is kind of what's being sold in the United States here today, or I was going to go the other way. And the other way was from copper-based silver-lined piece to a solid silver piece of cookware. And silver is technically a really wonderful conductor. It's better than copper. The reason why we use copper is it's got great heat transfer that really spreads the heat very evenly across the bottom of the pan, and therefore you're cooking things very evenly. I like to use an example, simple example of pancakes. You know, when you flip over a pancake and half of it's cooked and half of it's raw. The reason for that is the pan you're using is not really spreading the heat very quickly across the bottom of the pan, and you're left with spots that are hotter than others.
Okay.
So silver is the best metal for heat conduction, for that property that we're searching for. And instead of having a lining on those solid silver pans, it's just a hunk of silver that we're cooking on. So that's kind of the progression of pieces over time.
Okay. Um, I have here the first piece that the way I actually found you. So my clients will know when I shop for anything, I'm a nerd for metrics. And I'm trying to figure out how do I compare, pan A versus pan B. And correct me along the way if I'm wrong. But I was trying to figure out what are the specifics that I can scale for these individuals. And it sounded like, I'm on Reddit and fancy pan blogs. And conductivity and reactivity were the two things that I was trying to balance between by and large. And then maybe there's a third metric, ease of maintenance. So stainless steel, which is maybe what I was given when I first started out, is the easiest thing to cook with because you can throw it in the dishwasher and it doesn't really matter, but it is uneven heat transfer and it's slow.
And it's sticky as well. It is a bit sticky as if you're trying to cook a really light omelet on a stainless steel pan. It's very tough to get it to be to be slippery. Tin and silver, both tin and silver, are almost inherently non-stick, especially at lower temperatures. So I can take a really thin one egg omelet and rim the omelet in the pan that you have there, that 9-inch fry, and just give it a nice tug, and I can get that to flip over. Doing that with a stainless pan would be tough. So I think your combination there of reactivity, of conductivity, the ability to spread the heat, as well as maintenance, are three great metrics to be looking at.
Okay, so I was on the path of conductivity first, which is how I found this, which is this is your copper pan, right? And it has tin inside of it. And I'm Googling and researching, why can't we cook on just copper? Why do you need the tin?
Yep, the copper is reactive. So if you put an acid like a citrus, lemons, limes, vinegar, tomatoes, things that are acidic, the acid in those foods is going to try to pull the copper right off the pan and into the food. So if you wiped a raw piece of copper with some white vinegar and let it sit overnight, even in the morning, if you take a white paper towel and rub that area, it'll come off as green. So you're pulling that copper off into the food itself. So copper is great for the conductivity, for the spreading of that heat, and it needs a lining. It needs a separator between the food, those acidic foods, and the copper itself. So the tin, that traditional tin lining does the trick. It's restorable, separates the food, and it is a metal that isn't going to cause problems with the body. So it's a great metal for exactly what we're trying to do.
Okay, so that's where I started, and then I realized silver, this is just as conductive, this is less reactive, and then the next step up, and just so that everyone knows why I have these pans, I actually have a client who has a new house, and they're stocking their kitchen, so you were kind enough to send me 3 pans to give them all these choices, so I didn't just get these on loan just like a promo video. These are actually for a real client. So this obviously is the silver. You can see it's very shiny. It's reflective. This is less reactive, even still, than tin, and more conductive.
It is in making that pan. The only difference that we do between that pan and the tin line pan is we're polishing the inside as copper. So we really polish the inside to a mirror finish, okay. And then it's electroplated with a really thick layer of silver with flatware, with silver flatware that is electroplated. We're trying to do a layer on the cookware that's about 5 times thicker than what we do on flatware, what's done on flatware. So it's a nice thick layer of silver there. The silver isn't as reactive. Tin will be slightly reactive to the acids, not so much the acids, but there are certain things that'll turn the tin dark, okay. And it's not a problem. The tin goes dark. It definitely changes the look of the tin. It'll go battleship gray. Sometimes with chicken stock and things like that, it'll actually go almost black. But that's not the copper showing through. That's just the tin changing color.
Mine is that way, by the way. Is that okay? I have a pan from you that's tin lined. It's like a saucier. There's a fancy word for it. What do you call it?
The faitout. The faitout. F-A-I-T-T-O-U-T. And faire, the verb faire in French is to make, and T-O-U-T, tout, is all. So it's basically makes all. It's a great sauce creator.
I do. I use it for a lot of things, and it did. It went battleship gray with some stock reductions.
That makes total sense. So it's reactive to what you were doing there, and it darkens the tin a little bit. No problem with the tin. If you give it a little scrub or a scour, you'll notice that top layer comes off, and it's shiny tin underneath. We don't want to do that with the tin linings, okay. Because you're wearing away a little bit of that tin lining as you are scrubbing or scouring. So with either the tin lining or the silver lining, it's important that we wash relatively gingerly. And we're approaching your third metric here of ease of maintenance. These pans are high end cooking tools, and we need to take care of them a little bit. If you think of other things out there that are similar high end items, high end tools, a Ferrari, you're going to need more maintenance than the Buick.
Fair.
That they're just different. They're different tools, and you're going to need a little bit more maintenance for those high end tools. And obviously, these pans fit into that category.
Okay. So in terms of maintenance, silver versus tin, they sound very similar then. They're both hand wash. Is this easier to maintain, the silver than the tin?
The silver, when I'm cooking at home here, I tend to take the silver pan, and I'm doing omelets. So I'm doing relatively low temperature types of tasks with the silver pan, and in doing so, it really stays quite shiny and beautiful. The other direction that you could take these is it can cook hot. A tin line version can't cook super hot because the tin is going to melt. The silver lined version, as well as the solid silver version, the silver can handle really high temperatures. So you could sear a piece of tuna, you could sear a piece of steak in these pans, but it's going to sear those oils right onto the pan itself. So I like to think about taking these pans in one of two directions. You either know what it is and cook anything you want in it, or you love that it's beautiful and you cook low temperatures and it's going to stay really beautiful. The pan that I have here at home, the solid silver version that I've got here at home, I don't know if you can see with the light, but this pan's about 5 years old, 6 years old, and we polished it by hand probably 3 weeks ago, and it still is quite shiny and beautiful on the inside. If I cooked steaks in this and seared things in it, it would be black on the inside because you're searing those oils.
Can I see the bottom of that pan? Is it?
Yeah, it's a little darker.
It's not bad at all, though. Okay.
It's got a little. I think I'm getting a new range here in a couple of weeks, so I'm very excited. I have a 25-year-old Wolf here right now, and the flame is a little yellow,
Yeah.
and that's leaving a little bit of these marks on there.
Some carbon. What are you getting?
I'm getting a Lacanche. Lacanche was kind enough to put my pans in all of their in their showrooms, New York, California, and Washington. And when my Wolf is beginning to give up the ghost here, that was my first call. So I'm excited, very excited.
I would imagine so. Before I move on from this beautiful pan, which is the copper silver, in fabric we deal in microns pretty often, cashmere, merino wools. Do you have any idea? You talked about the plating between flatware and this being much thicker. Do you happen to know what those numbers are?
Flatware is on the order of 5 microns, and so we're trying to hit 25.
Wow.
25, so 5 times thicker than and I forget whether it's microns or mil. It's one or the other.
I would guess it's microns because that'd be a lot of mil.
Okay. It's not a millimeter. It's mil, MIL just means something, and I'm spacing here at the moment of which one it is. But yes, 5 times thicker. So we're shooting for 25, and the way that you can do that with electroplating is either with time or with energy. So you get a bigger energy source and crank it up. You're moving more silver from the bar to the piece that you're working on, or you leave it in a longer period of time and you're able to build up a thicker and thicker layer.
Is one better than the other?
I think it has a lot. I would. The low and slow to me is better.
In most of life, that is true. Low and slow is usually better.
It's like the rabbit, tortoise, and the hare, right?
Yeah.
Low and slow. Yeah,
Um,
I feel like it would give a more complete plate, and those nooks and crannies around the rivets and those types of things, giving it a longer period of time is going to allow those areas to build up a little bit more than a hard and fast plate.
okay. And for seasoning, between the tin and the silver, again, I have a tin one and I just sweated some onions per your recommendation.
Yep.
Do I need to do that with the silver as well as a different seasoning process?
It's not like a cast iron pan where you need to take care of that seasoning. The seasoning of these, I wouldn't even call it a seasoning. I just recommend when you've got one of these pans that's new to sweat an onion down in the pan, and it'll give you an idea of, just for a very simple task, and give you an idea for how the pan reacts to the heat, how things are getting hot quickly, how things are stirring and stuff like that. Just simple sweating down of an onion gives you a baseline almost, such that the first thing you cook, you've got something to relate to. I've had people with a tin lined pan cook a grilled cheese first thing they're cooking, and full blast on the heat and cooking the grilled cheese, and flipping it over. It's already too hot. They've melted the tin.
Yeah.
Sweating an onion down is a low temperature task that just gives you some tactile feel of what you're working with.
I have a carbon steel pan that I do most of my really hot searing in, and it's been well seasoned, 500 degrees in the oven for an hour several times. So what you're cooking on, if I understand correctly, you're not so much cooking on the actual carbon steel anymore, you're cooking on the seasoning layer, right? That's what you're actually touching with the food. So your
Absolutely.
conductivity and reactivity is informed by those two different surfaces, right? If you wanted to season something like this, is there any point, since you're not touching the silver at all anymore, you'd be touching a layer of seasoning
Is there any point to
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 truly
seasoning it?
seasoning something like this?
Yep, I have had I've had a pan come back to me that was the large fry pan, silver lined copper piece,
Okay.
and the gent just used it for absolutely everything and loved it, and he wanted it redone to just make it beautiful again, but he had basically cooked himself a seasoning right onto it, and it was black on the inside. Nothing was wrong with the silver on the inside. It was just extremely well used,
Okay, fair
and
enough.
not so loved, right?
Well, he loved it a lot, maybe just in a different way.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've seen this pan. That's the tin lined one. I'm going to take this one away for just a moment. And this is your finest creation, because of course it has a bag with it. And here we have the silver pan, which is, nice and shiny on this side, but it's also, silver on this side as well. So this is the ultimate when it comes to cooking, right?
I tend to think yes. You've got a piece there that has the best conductivity that you'll have. You can end up cooking at relatively low temperatures, and it's just got a great spread of heat. Traditionally, to get that level of conductivity, you're talking about a copper pan that has a lining, and that lining needs to be replaced. It needs to be restored. It needs to be taken care of, and that lining doesn't exist with this solid silver piece. And then there's kind of the esoteric side of things, where when I reach for that pan on my stove to cook an omelet, it just makes me smile. It is something that is so unique and so wild to be able to cook with, right? That it just gives me a little smile every time I reach for it.
It's like the Leica theory of cameras. Like, I want to take more pictures because I like the camera that I'm using.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I one of the this wasn't a comment about the solid silver piece, but Ruth Reichel of Gourmet Magazine, New York Times, she wrote a piece in Town and Country on the silver lined copper piece, and one of the greatest lines that she wrote about in that article was, I found myself slowing down to better appreciate the experience. So here's somebody who has cooked and written about cooking her entire life, and it even changed how she thought about cooking. I thought that was a great line from her.
Wow, that's awesome.
Mm.
Okay, so walk me through this pan. I know that, and I'm going to flip you so that you can see what I see. There you go. This obviously is pure silver. It's not sterling silver. It's 925.
It is 925 sterling. Yes. So on the backside there, you'll see 925 sterling along with the logo.
Yep, I see that. And
So
then,
this is not, yeah, this is not fine silver. This is sterling, and sterling is for something like this that is going to get bounced around on the stove, get bounced around, hopefully not in a cupboard, right? You want to keep this thing on the stove. It's tougher than fine silver. Fine silver isn't as strong as sterling, so this is why sterling's used for articles like these. So we take a flat piece of in this 9-inch case, the piece is about 11 inches in diameter, and we're spinning it on the same lathe, same tools that we do for the copper piece, into shape, spinning that into shape, and then I'm making the rivets as well. So I've got an engine lathe where I'm cutting out the rivets in a little T-shaped rivet with a rounded head to it, and those rivets I anneal so they're nice and soft, so that when I strike them with the hammer, they're really spread out beautifully on the tail side. And what you're looking at there right now is the tail side of those rivets. And yeah, we really work hard to make the merge between the pan itself and the rivets, and on the flip side, the pan and that handle just nice and tight and clean, and as if it always existed that way, right? From the handle there, the handle is cast iron. Cast iron on the other side of the metals equation is a very poor conductor of heat. So coming up that handle is very slowly heating that handle, which is what you want, because you don't want to grab a super hot handle, because the handle's gotten hot so quickly. And then I also sew on a leather wrap to that cast iron handle, just as an aesthetic and as a little bit of a tactile feel as well. I'd say about 75% of the people that have been buying these have gone with that leather on there. Some people have said, "Ooh, I want to use this in the oven. Can you leave that wrap off?" And I've done that for a couple people as well.
I think the client that just ordered through us from you last week, he wanted no leather, correct?
Correct. Yes, he was that particular pan. That was that pan that he purchased, and that particular pan. Yeah, you could cook 2 hens in the oven in that. You could do a ratatouille, something really beautiful in that
Yeah.
in that pan in the oven. I think it's the saucepans that this pan that you have there, the Fay 2 piece it's not really an oven style pan, so I think
No.
that doing the leather on the saucepans is a good idea, and maybe not so much on the fries that you might use in the oven.
Is there, so I know that tin will begin to melt. What's the temperature range for tin?
Tin will melt about 475 degrees. So it's well within the cooking temperatures. If you think about what to avoid, we don't have a thermometer on the range top, so we don't have a good idea of what the temperature is. But you want to avoid the combination of high heat and dry task. So
Okay.
avoid high and dry is going to get you to a place where you're not melting the tin. So any task that is high heat, if it's got a lot of liquid to it, boiling a pan of water, simple, no problem. You can go super high heat, because all of that water is going to keep the pan at 212 degrees until all the water is evaporated,
Right.
and then the temperature is going to rise. But a a dry task. My wife loves to toast rice, so she'll take a saucepan dry white rice and just be toasting away, driving the moisture out of the rice, dry rice, right? And it's beginning to take on a little almondy color to it. That's a task that you don't want to do in a tin-lined pan because it's high heat as well as dry heat, and you're going to melt the tin in doing so. Something that's a little bit in the middle is a grilled cheese. Every time somebody sends me a pan that has the tin that's been melted, I'll ask them, what were you cooking? And 75% of the time, it's a grilled cheese. So if you think about it, it's a high temperature task. That's how kind of we think about a grilled cheese, but there's no real liquid to it. It's pretty dry, and it gets out of the range pretty quickly.
Okay, so we had high and dry, and that was the maybe the watch phrase for not damaging the pan. Does that also apply to corresponding the diameter of your pan to your task? Meaning a wet task, but in the middle of the pan could still damage the tin on the edges that aren't being used?
It's with a tin lined pan, it would be quite rare to have just a small area that was too hot and melt in that area. I've seen it, yes. I think that whoever was cooking caught it very quickly and was able to stop doing what they were doing or stop accelerating the problem. So usually it's the entire bottom of the pan, that tin lined pan, that gets overheated.
Okay. I think I have two last questions for you. The first, I sear quite a bit of steak, and if I want to use the silver, is there a threshold temperature that I cannot use? It's like, can I use this, obviously without the leather, in a broiler 1500 degrees?
Yeah, it's the solid silver pan. As far as a threshold, there really isn't. I mean, silver's going to melt at 1700 degrees, so
Okay.
you're way out there with respect to that. So there's really not a threshold there. You're certainly going to, as we mentioned before, you're going to burn some oils onto the cooking surface, but if that's the direction you want to go and that's where you want to take the pan, it can handle that, no problem.
Okay.
The silver lining is probably around 800 degrees that you don't want to go above, but again, it's hard to tell what that temperature is because we don't really have a thermometer on the range top there.
Got it. Okay. And the last one, this client that just bought this pan is having it monogrammed. Tell me a little bit about the customization options available to your pans.
Sure. On the copper pans, I started out having a very simple set of Times New Roman stamps that we could stamp the initials in the side of a pan, and that to some people they wanted more flexibility, and I found just a fantastic hand engraver in Maine. This gentleman does all of his work by hand, looking through a loop instead of doing anything on the computer. And you could imagine a laser hooked up to a computer could engrave something as well. But everything he does is by hand, and he's an incredible talent. So I have done tiny little engravings of lilies on the sides of pans that he's done for me. We've done crests. I had somebody in Israel buy a set of pans, and we did their family crest on the sides of these pans. And I think I sent to you the other day just an example of, it was a shield with some vines and flowers and my
Beautiful.
initials on the side of a saute pan, and it was 2 inches by 2 inches or so,
Okay.
but very capable, very talented person that's doing these. And one of the bigger ones that I did was the bottom of that 9-inch fry pan that we've been talking about all day. Johnson and Wales University here in Rhode Island has Emeril Lagasse, doing a lot of money raising for them over the years. And a few years ago, they wanted to give him a thank you, and they gave him the 9-inch pan there, and they had engraved their 15-year anniversary logo on the bottom of that pan. So same gentleman up in Maine did this for us, and it was a very complicated, unique logo, and it covered the entire bottom of the pan. So it was a presentation piece for Johnson & Wales to give to Emerald.
Very cool. Well, Jim, thanks for your time today. I appreciate it. The pans are awesome. I love using them. I love showing them to clients. Love when a client also appreciates it. I have a next client in 1 minute, so I'm going to run. Hope you have a good
Fantastic.
weekend.
Thank you again. I appreciate the support. Any questions, let me know.
Thank you, sir. Talk soon.